This October 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Union Township Zoning Commission is now called to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. McCormick, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Topp.
Here.
Mr. Wing.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
We have 4 board members present.
So we have a quorum. It's my understanding that Chairman Lewis is not here because it's his 70th birthday. So before we proceed with the events of the evening, well, I think the rest of the board will join me in wishing Mr. Lewis a happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Eric.
What an excuse to get out of a meeting.
That's right.
So first item on the agenda is action on the minutes for our June 25th, 2025 meeting. Do I hear any additions, corrections, or deletions?
No,
Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as circulated?
I'll make that motion. Second.
I have a regularly made and seconded motion to approve the minutes from our June 25th, 2025 meeting. Mr. McCormick, if you'd call roll.
Yes. Mr. Smith.
Abstain.
Mr. Toft.
Yes.
Mr. Wing.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, as a reminder for any members of the public in attendance tonight, if you'd like to speak, there are sign-in sheets at the back of the room. And when it's time for public comment, if you bring those up to me, and we'll go in order. Thank you. Do we have any old business to be reopened?
No.
Okay, that brings us to new business, which is case number 2-25-T, which is a proposed text amendment regarding lighting regulations, specifically Article 14, Sections 1400 to 1408 of our zoning resolutions. Mr. McCormick, could you provide us with a summary, please?
Yes, so this text is substantially similar to what the board would have seen a few months ago. The staff drafted some new regulations for the code, a new article regarding primarily exterior lighting. This was reviewed by the board. It was sent to legal counsel. It was reviewed by the board a second time after staff and legal counsel made some adjustments, and then went, and now it's been revised and is ready to potentially go back to the trustees with your blessing. I don't believe there were any, in what when I looked at, like anything that was a major change that we hadn't discussed in these proposed amendments. But I'd be happy to address any questions you have over these this new article, these new sections between sections 1400 to section 1408 for lighting standards and codes.
Okay. So I'll open it up to commission members. Does anyone have any questions or things to point out regarding this proposed text amendment for lighting? Well, I'll kick off. I've got a few things. In 1402, we are going to ban the following types of exterior lighting, and that includes lights that pulse, flash, rotate, or simulate motion, which I don't have necessarily a problem with. But in 1404, we've created some exceptions of temporary lighting that'll be exempted as lawn ornaments or similar lighting devices. So what I'm trying to get at is Christmas lights are not specifically called out. String lights are, and obviously some Christmas lights do dim and come back on and off. I want to see do we think that 1404.3 includes that kind of decorative lighting, or should that be clarified?
Yeah, I think for seasonal lighting, that would be okay. I mean, if they're using them year round and there's blinking going on, that might be different. It's really, is it a distraction to people or not? Distraction
Right.
to the driver, distractions to the neighbors, where it's a nuisance.
The no Griswold rule.
So there are companies out there now permanently installing lights on people's homes, calling them holiday lights, but they're able to change the colors and the patterns and all that. And, I've not heard of anybody having a problem with them, but I could see that particular situation. If it's permanently installed, then does that make it something we look at harder?
I mean, I don't know if it's a problem at the present time. I think if we put these rules into effect and we start to see that becomes more widespread, that could be something we go back and make an amendment
Most of
to
those
it.
are eve lightings, and
Yeah,
it would be more a nuisance to the homeowner than to the neighbors.
Well, there's one in particular I
Okay.
see all the time that it's not only, it is bright.
Okay.
It is a Griswold Christmas.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Well, 1402 specifically cites LED window and building trim and/or accent lighting.
right, so would that fall in there if they're using it as a holiday decoration?
Well, see, and that's part of the reason that I asked that question, to see if 1404-3 would include that, and it seems to. Would that also potentially include, what about lights for illuminating flagpoles?
Right, I think that would fall under the exemption in 1401, though, 14012, lighting that's required by the law.
Yeah.
The law does state that if you fly the flag at night, it must be lit.
And then my other concern is even too strong of a word, but 1403-4, no mounted lighting shall be erected or maintained in a manner which projects more than 4 feet from the facade of the building to which the lighting is attached. My only concern here is we do have some rural residents that it wouldn't offend anybody because there aren't any neighbors around, and they may wish to illuminate their property greater than 4 feet for safety purposes. I don't know if there's something, we've previously defined some zoning resolutions by lot size or by how much frontage there is. I don't mean to open a can of worms on this, but I am curious about if
So
that.
there is an allowance for a variance.
Right.
Of up to 25% at the staff level. The other thing is you have to consider that these are gonna be complaint-based enforcement like everything else.
Of course, right.
We're not gonna drive around and be like, is that light casting a 4-foot, area, or is that a 6-foot area? It's gonna be probably those instances where it's been a complaint by the neighbor, and it's more than likely far exceeding the 4-foot amount. So, just like a lot of other sections of our code, this is primarily gonna be a problem, more than likely because it's well over the amount. Now, I did see the 4-foot amount, and I thought to myself, maybe it could be a little bit bigger or broader. The bigger issue that's in the code is that you don't want it to go into the road right-of-ways
Right.
and onto
Right.
the other property, so
Right.
I don't know exactly where this came from, as far as like who added it in there, if that was a legal counsel thing, or if that was something we pulled in from somewhere else, but I wouldn't have a problem in eliminating it, because in my opinion, the other things that we're trying to do are, the bases are covered.
Right.
And just like the other comment you made here a moment ago, like when I read number 3 even, that we were just talking about, in section 1404.
Right.
I probably would have maybe hedged it and not even listed some of those other lights, because I think in trying to list those things, you almost make it more difficult. And some of one of
Right.
those is not even temporary.
Right.
Like
Well,
the
right, lamp posts.
Lamp post is not temporary,
Right.
right? So when I read it, because I was reading it again before the meeting, I kind of felt like we were maybe putting too much in there, and maybe less would have been more there, like to strike that part out. Like, we know what temporary lighting is. We don't need to list it out,
Right.
really.
Right.
And,
But you do want lamp posts as an exception.
right. I think it would have been simpler to say temporary lighting or lighting that might be considered incidental and maybe list what a couple of those things would be without getting into like the Christmas light scenario. Would have been maybe a little easier to address that section.
Right.
I feel like that would be an easy thing to clean up if we want to do that.
I had
I
concerns about the 4 feet as well. I'd be to remove that, really, that section. I think 4 feet's pretty restrictive.
I think you'd be hard pressed to
I
find
mean,
any light
a
right
floodlight over a garage is
Right.
gonna go
Well,
up
yeah.
over
My
4
porch
feet.
light.
Yeah,
Not one of my lights is under 4 feet.
No.
Because the bigger thing is the foot candle measurement at
Right.
the property line and by the road. So in my opinion, having that in there, we've already got, like I said, we've already got our bases covered. Why throw that number in there? And I think there's one in there for the commercial and industrial areas, about a 6-foot number. And it's kind of the same thing for
Right.
that one,
right.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it should just be regulated by whatever, some illumination at the property line, whether it's
Yeah, I mean, that's
0,
what-
a half, or whatever foot candles.
That's what the tables are for, and that's what the
Yeah.
other items are
Yeah.
for, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's really required, item 4 and 1403.
I mean, we could, if you want, we can propose to strike that one and maybe the other one that's like it.
Yeah,
So if they want to keep it, they can, as far as
Right,
the
of course.
trustees.
We're just recommending.
Right. Yeah, so specifically what Mr. McCormick is referring to is 1405-3.
Right.
Which is for lighting in commercial and industrial districts.
Right.
Building mounted lighting located within 50 feet of a residential district shall be installed no higher than 6 feet from the grade.
That I don't have a problem with.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah, that's a little different than item 4.
The other one is, which
Yeah.
projects
Yeah.
more than.
well, and that's why I wanted us to
Yeah.
look at it, just to
Yeah.
make sure. Yeah, I would leave that alone.
Yeah.
I think we're probably safe striking 1403-4.
Right.
I would agree with that.
And so, the next question, really what we're returning to is 1404-3,
3.
to see if we want to alter it at all, leave it as is.
Instead of string lights, maybe we could put seasonal included in that. I mean, that,
Well,
I mean, that opens it up to sort of year-round lighting if you just
Yeah, a lot of
change your
people have-
strings.
So, yeah, for instance, in my backyard, I have quite a large deck back there, and I do have the low intensity string lights, and they're up year round.
Yep.
Right.
They're only turned on when we're using it,
Yeah.
but,
I mean, I don't think there's a problem with it
I like it.
as
I think it's
is,
fine.
because I think it gives enough, I think there's enough room here for enforcement to be within the spirit of the zoning resolutions.
so, under 14043, would we strike lamp posts, because those are permanent, those are not temporary?
Right.
We could put in seasonal lighting, string lights. That way you've covered both of those, if we want, and they're examples, it says right there, such as.
Right.
I think that the problem with lampposts is it needs to be identified separately.
Right.
Like, maybe it should be something like
temporary.
lampposts, comma, or temporary lighting that is not prohibited, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Right.
It's just
Okay.
not, it's not like everything else that it's lumped into. So I think just separating it and acknowledging that we're including that and things that are like that and these other things, just maybe separating them a little bit, wording it just a little bit differently would make
Yeah.
would achieve what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, because you just don't want to, it's not temporary.
Right.
And you don't want it included there because it sets a bad precedent for something that's permanent being declared temporary.
Would you be oppositional then to having it start off, maybe like, just to be simple with it, lamppost, comma, or temporary lighting that is not prohibited under this section?
So 3 would start lamp posts
Lampposts.
I
or,
think that would be the easiest fix.
yeah, temporary,
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be fine to make that change. That just, to
Flip
make
around.
it,
Yeah, flip it around the way it's read.
just to make it clear, that you're not calling lampposts
Temporary.
temporary. So that addressed most of the topics I wanted to discuss. Does anyone else have anything regarding lighting?
I did have a question regarding lighting, and it came out of Deer Park. So a friend of mine, his in-laws have had a street-mounted light for years, and one of the neighbors complained to Duke, and they took it down and moved it way down the street. Is there any control,
If it's in the right of way,
so Duke can put it wherever they want? Okay.
we had a complaint for the same type of issue here a few months ago, and we can call them and we can try to get them to do it, but at the end of the day, we
Okay.
don't. We do have control on the road right of way, but at the same time, if it's Duke's light, it makes it, it depends on whether it's in a lighting district. I mean, on one of the calls we had, that the resident was upset because they replaced it with the new bulb, and they didn't like the new bulb because the LED was
Purple.
either too bright or that was a purple, one or the other. And they don't even make the old bulb anymore, so,
Right.
but like Duke couldn't even put the bulb that they wanted in there anymore, so.
Okay.
Okay. So at this point, I will open,
I have a comment.
Oh,
if you don't
sorry.
mind. Sure. With 1405, item 4, we're trying to restrict lighting in here. 40 feet above grade is a very tall pole. And I went and looked through other townships and what I feel comparable and, have good commercial districts and, and the typical pole is, an 12, I think it was for cutoff lighting and 24 for the other type of lighting, 24 is for cutoff lighting and 10 to 12 feet is for non-cutoff lights. And I've found several references to 10 to 12 feet for, let me get non-cutoff and 24 feet for cutoff lights. I think we may want to look at that height. It seems very, very tall to me. And
Yeah, I know 30 feet was a number that I've seen. Some of that depends on what kind of commercial area you're talking about. If you're talking about a parking lot, like some of these big areas that we
Eastgate
have over
Mall,
here,
yeah.
the mall or Walmart or Jungle Gyms, or, I mean, that's a very different lighting situation than like your more quaint downtown,
Right.
Main Street areas.
I thought about that, and I looked at Deerfield Township. They have shopping centers. I looked at Westchester Township, Anderson Township, Kroger's, those things. I mean, they still have these large businesses that can function and still have these, light poles that are not as high. And I think with LED lighting today, it can be achieved. And I don't know if we really want to, something to think about is, the height of that pole. When it seems like in today's industry, it's much
It's not
smaller.
needed.
Yeah, it's not needed.
So are you thinking like that 40-foot number, more like 25 foot?
Yeah, something, and then I question, do we reference cutoff versus non-cutoff? There's a difference.
Right.
So I don't know if we relook at that or make a recommendation to change that. It's just some thought.
I know, there's one particular that gets me in the mornings when I'm driving into Batavia, and that's Sunbelt on 32.
Yeah,
That is offensively bright, driving into that in the mornings.
Yeah.
And if they were downward directed, they got changed to be outward directed. So I'd like to see us prevent that from happening.
yeah.
Yeah, the downward directed and shielded should help a lot. I mean, the photometric plans that we have will
Yeah.
help a lot as well. I don't know what to tell you as far, there's really no industry standard that we can go by, it's whatever.
When if they
some of
want to
these
go
things are
higher,
whatever
then
we want them to
they
be.
request it when they put the plan in.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we still have the restriction with the foot candles at the property line, right? Are we at a half a foot candle? Is that what it's stated in here? Or is that just
Yeah.
for the residential district? See,
No, there's commercial in there too.
the commercial district is based off of, based on the activity, right? At the entrance.
Yeah, but I mean, at the property lines and the right of way, we're gonna tell them a 1/2-foot candle.
Does that state in here under the lighting commercial and industrial districts?
I saw that.
I didn't see it. I see it under the resident,
It basically says
1404.
where the zoning director determines,
Right.
you know, they'll have to determine to specify what your measurement
I
needs
guess
to
I
be, and
would.
I can tell you that I'm telling everybody and have been telling them for quite some time, it just wasn't in the book, a 1/2-foot candle. So, I mean, could we make it more obvious? We could.
I don't particularly have an issue with 40 feet above grade.
I want to say there is a 1/2-foot candle number here somewhere.
It's for resident, it's under 1404.
Well, that's.
1404
there it is too. Yep.
And that's for residential lighting, residential districts, so. I would recommend that something be added to that nature for the commercial district as well, if you're enforcing it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, we could just modify number 1 on 1405 to add that little add-on.
With maximum.
Yep. That's an easy thing to do.
Okay.
Just based on my research, I would recommend a 12-foot pole heights for non-cutoff and 24-foot high for cutoff.
You said 12 for non-cutoff and 40 for the other,
Or 24,
24?
yeah. Or 25, we go 25.
Yeah, for some reason I was thinking the utility poles that they would put in normally are somewhere in that 25 to 30-foot range. I don't know what the number is for sure, or if it's uniform, but
No. Based on just around my yard, the different heights of everything, there's quite a few different ones I use.
well, I mean, if the board would like for me to make that as an adjustment, we can certainly serve it to the trustees that way, and whether they agree with all these changes or not, that's up to them. I mean, it will be their final decision
Right.
once it goes back to them.
And so that's an edit to 1405.
Yep.
1405.
And
Yep.
we settle, it's 12 and 25.
Yes, is what I'd recommend.
12 for.
So before we formalize that in a motion, we'll recap all of the proposed changes once we do that. But we have members of the public here, and it is a public meeting, so we'll ask for public comment specifically on lighting and the proposed change of Article 14. So if anybody would like to speak on that, please bring your sheet up, your sign-in sheet. Yes, ma'am.
There is no case number, is this the case number?
It's 2-25-T. All we're talking about right now is lighting.
I just wanted to fill my form out correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
Correct?
Yeah, I'll fill a case number on there.
You were talking about the string lights and stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think it was back in the summer, they expanded fireworks days in the township. Didn't they add a whole lot of different holidays?
That's a township ordinance, not a zoning ordinance thing. Our
Okay.
code is part of the township code, but what you're talking about is covered under the broader branch of codes.
Would that make holiday lights also available to be lit up anytime that fireworks are allowed to get off? Are they gonna? Because I think you intend lights to be less often, but there's more holidays that have been added for fireworks. Would that interfere
Yeah, I
with each
mean-
other?
The township resolution doesn't address
No.
lighting. This would be where the lighting for that kind of thing would probably come into play. And again, it's more of a, is this a year-round thing? And if it's a year-round thing, is it creating a nuisance? Basically is what we're looking at. That's the reason why we're creating rules for lighting.
Yeah, I don't even think we reference holiday lights when we finally had this discussion. We're not gonna reference that.
Oh, I thought that was in there. All right.
We discussed it,
we
we're not
talked
gonna
about
reference
we
it.
talked about it with
Yeah.
string lighting. And just for the record, you're Kyla Hucker, 1320 Minks.
Yes. Oh, no, thank
You've
you.
been here before.
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause people put up lights for Halloween, you name it. There's lights up for just about
Easter,
anything you can think of. Yeah.
Yeah. Just make sure I understand everything. Are you striking number 4 on 1403?
That had been discussed, and I believe that may be what we do. We haven't formalized a motion, but that is something that was discussed.
Yeah, 1404.
1403.
Wouldn't be, it would not be a strike. It would-
Yeah, 1403.
But that's not residential, what's a zoning district? Is that your,
That would be
That's
everywhere
everywhere.
everywhere?
Yes.
for that section.
I wanted to say thank you for 14042. I'm really opposed to a lot of the outdoor lighting. It just, you never get any darkness. So I appreciate that one.
Seems like we get less searchlights than we used to. Seems like we used to have a lot more with stores doing
It
it.
was a lot of auto dealers, and
Right.
that kind of went by the wayside back at the end of the 90s,
Right.
early 2000s.
Well, I like the covered and downward facing. A neighbor had to take out some trees, and the neighbor on the other side of him has those, you were talking about their string lights, but they're big like house bulb side, and they just, but, I think that was, oh, why are the pole-mounted lighting, why is it based on grade versus height? What's the purpose of a grade versus the standard height? You guys are having that discussion.
That's a pretty standard number, when you're measuring something that's gonna be above grade, whether it's a light or sign or structure. You have your at grade where it's installed and then the peak of it.
That, okay.
I
was
think
just wondering
sometimes
why.
too, in lighting, there's a concrete base.
Right.
And a light pole that sits on top of that. So if you say the light, the whole, so we're just referencing that the base and the light pole can't exceed 40 feet. In this case, it was 40 feet above grade.
All right. Height, oh, would that large height still be in play if that light was put next to a residential property? Like a house that's already existing? Is there anything to keep that property owner from having to deal with a 40-foot pole if there's a residence next to a commercial property? And they want to go with a 40-foot pole, is there anything to protect the homeowner?
We're already talking about changing that.
That is the
40
one
we're-
that you
we're
guys,
talking about
that's the
changing that number.
25, 12 and 25.
12 and 25.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Probably the more important thing is if it's near a residential area, it's supposed
Right.
to face downward, directed and away from the residential area, so it's not
Whole
like,
other set of rules.
there shouldn't be
1405
anything facing the now there might be, you might be able to still tell there's a light there, but it won't be,
In your face, yeah.
yes.
Because that gets addressed in 1405 too, where it tells them how they can direct that
Yeah.
away from the residence.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? Okay, then I will close the public comment portion on 2-25-T. And so now we'll just discuss and see if we've come to an agreement regarding the modifications to the proposed text. So somebody stop me if if I miss one.
Okay.
First change comes in 1403-4, which is just eliminating that section of text.
Correct.
The next is 1404-3, which moves lamp post to the start of that section and then continues on or temporary lighting.
Correct.
The next change is to 1405-4, which eliminates 40 feet above grade and changes it to 12/25 based on, what was that again, Mr. Smith? I apologize.
Non-cutoff and cutoff lights.
Thank you. Momentarily left my,
1405-1, if we go back to that, I think we had talked about
Adding that.
adding with
We did.
max elimination of 0.5
0.5 candle.
foot
Yep.
candles at adjacent property lines.
correct.
Yep.
Okay. Those are all of the changes I have recorded. So if everyone is comfortable with that, I'll formulate a motion.
That's all I have.
So this is a motion for case number 2-25-T, which is a zoning resolution text amendment. The zoning commission finds that the proposed text amendment to the Union Township zoning resolution is consistent with the intent of the zoning resolution and comprehensive land use plan. The modifications being considered apply to Article 14, lighting, sections 1400 through 1408. This commission reviewed proposed changes to the zoning resolution and discussed and agreed to multiple modifications of the proposed text, which Mr. McCormick recorded during the commission's meeting. Our recommendation is to forward the proposed text amendment with the recorded modifications to the Board of Trustees for consideration and approval that they be adopted. This concludes my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
So I've got a regularly made and seconded motion. Any discussion? Mr. McCormick, if you'd call roll.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Toft,
Yes.
Mr. Wing,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
This is what I was thinking. This is actually under commercial. That's why I was.
Yeah.
So that deals with our one case on our agenda. The rest moves into administration or administrative. We've been asked to discuss a number of potential text amendments that are not officially cases yet. So this is just a public meeting to hear from the public and the commission regarding these proposed, what could be proposed text amendments. So the first of these, going in just numerical order, is Article, well, I suppose what we'll start with Article 6, proposed changes there that concern short-term rentals. So Mr. McCormick, if you would provide us with a summary of that.
Certainly. So short-term rentals are also known as Airbnb, they're the VRBO, there are other sites that serve the same purpose. Those are kind of the main ones. The township essentially has rules for bed and breakfast, but they're for the old type of bed and breakfast. So
Right.
when I started the township about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, this was something I had identified that we probably ought to discuss, and it was never really brought up to the very top of the list. And as a result of a particular grouping that an owner had, we were aware that the owner had a unit, and when we talked to him, we found out he had 3 units. And I'm sure these are not the only ones in the township. In the process of trying to craft something but not have it completed, he went to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Board of Zoning Appeals denied the applications. We continue to work on this text, and he has also provided his input on the draft text that we have. I expect because of the nature of the text and what it involves, we're probably gonna see some changes. We have already ran this through our legal counsel, but I still think we're likely to see some additional things being done with it. So in here, between Article 6 and also in the appendix, we've defined short-term rental. I'm gonna actually skip to the appendix real quick to just acknowledge what the short-term rental is, because I think that's important as much as what's in Article 6. The short-term rental, the definition we have drafted so far would mean any dwelling that is leased or rented in full or part and for a fee to any person for the purpose of providing overnight lodging for less than 30 consecutive days. Short-term rentals may include, but are not limited to, any type of dwelling permitted in the applicable zoning district, but shall not include any hotel, motel, bed and breakfast establishment, group home, or convalescent facility as regulated elsewhere within the zoning resolution. So theoretically, using this definition, if someone were to rent a property, a dwelling or multifamily dwelling for more than 30 consecutive days, it would not be considered a short-term rental. It would be considered just like someone renting a house
Right.
under a lease for, like most people do for a year or for 6 months or whatever, usually a longer term. This is for anything that would be less than 30 consecutive days, the way that it's drafted. So that is a number that is totally subject to change. If you were trying to do homework in different areas, that is one of the things you would see that would be different.
Right.
The other things that you would see that would be different are where those are allowed and how those are allowed. So in Article 6, in Section 612, that is the rules related to the residential districts for estate residential. And then in the other sections that follow, I think we'll come to those. I believe it's related to R1 and R2, because by default, these things that are referenced in the estate residential areas are also allowed as conditional uses in the R1 and the R2. So one of the other things that you'll see if you do homework on short-term rental types of code is they sometimes will allow or not allow them in some of these areas that we're talking about. Some communities will only allow them in, like, you know, something that might be similar to an R2 or R3 and higher as far as intensity in their code. You know, what we have drafted right now, the bed and breakfasts were allowed under conditional uses in all of these zones that we're talking about. So for now, we've put them in the same area, but that's, you know, up for discussion between the boards and the board trustee. And the Board of Zoning Appeals was very interested in this text being formed as well. And I had promised, and I did send them the draft text that we had. I had one member give me some feedback initially. I think they're more likely to give me feedback as we get to the next step. And what we'll do the next time is we'll advertise for them to all be here, whether they're here or not. Because I think they indicated they wanted to be part of the discussion, because they're the ones that are gonna have to review these, because they're.
Well, right, they're on the front line of
Yeah, these are all gonna
granting
be.
these conditional uses.
They're all set to be conditional uses, so they
Right.
all have to have a public hearing the way they're set up.
Right.
They all have to meet these parameters that we're putting into place. And the board, I think, wants to be, you know, in line with what the zoning commission and the trustees are wanting to do, and make sure that they don't have any major heartache over what's there or not there.
Right.
So, you know, in looking at the short-term rentals, I went over the definition. A conditional use is gonna be required no matter what zoning district it's in. So there's gonna be a public hearing requirement, just like the bed and breakfast. That's number 11A under the conditional use section. As far as the performance standards, they would all have to have smoke detectors, and that's what you see in B. They would have to, there's a reference to where those would all have to be. On the written comments we got from Mr. Reicholt, he had a comment on number 3 about the main gathering areas and hallways and so forth. And in all honesty, I don't know that comment that he made would change a lot, because I think the fire department would require
Right,
those
right,
anyways. And I mean, that's just something I'll let him know on some of these things when we have answers like that. Fire extinguishers, you know, that's another item. Actually, probably try to keep this up where people can see it here. Where we're at now would be right here, fire extinguishers. We have carbon monoxide detectors in here. That's pretty common. There is no, you know, between the staff, the legal counsel, and other people that have reviewed it so far, nobody's had any problems with that. Dryer vent reference as far as like having ducts to the exterior of the structure. GFCI outlets to be installed. That was no problem on that one so far. Swimming pool acknowledgement, you know, what the rules would be for those. Same thing there. Owner or entity managing responsible would prominently post or otherwise cause to be displayed emergency exit plan on each floor of the unit. We did have a comment on that from Mr. Reicholt, and I think he was confused because I think he thought they had to be in every room. And
Right.
it was just one on every floor, which I don't think is that much of an issue for people to have to do. I don't know if it's something that's required in a lot of the places that you could stay. I know, like, a lot of places I've stayed, I don't know that they've necessarily had it, but at the same time, I don't know that I think it's a bad idea either. And I don't know that it's that hard for the people to do.
They're required on so many properties now. If you want
Yeah.
to become a foster parent, you have to do that in your home.
Yeah, I don't know that I consider that one to be a big burden.
No, it isn't. It's easy to do.
No, and in fact, it seems like there's a pretty sizable inducement for a property owner engaging in this kind
I
of
think it would
commercial
reduce
activity to do
liabilities.
it.
Yeah, it might, probably would help them on insurance, if nothing else as well. I think he just read that one wrong,
You want me
honestly.
to chime in a little bit on the insurance front too? Should we say something on this, the pools and the spas, that the chemicals and the maintenance need to be regulated somehow? So I've had claims where, chemicals were
So that, I guess what you would do there.
out of whack and we had a respiratory issue.
Chemical burner.
Yep.
So what you could do, at the very end, you'll see that it says,
Right.
otherwise maintained in accordance with all applicable provisions of the Union Township zoning resolution and of the Clermont County Building Code. You could also reference the health code.
Yeah.
I think that would probably take care
Because
of it.
any indoor pool in any hotel is being maintained, for the chemicals, because that's a big.
Because that's who does the inspection, would be the
Yep.
health department through the county.
Yep. I think we need to address that, because that's more common than, unfortunately, somebody drowning.
Oh, yeah.
That's an easy thing to add.
Okay.
I don't, and honestly.
Just because I had
if
2
there's a-
claims on it last year.
If we're gonna reference that they have to be compliant with the building code, I don't see why. you
Yeah, that'd
wouldn't
be a health
reference the
code.
health
Okay.
code.
Good deal.
Guest room sections, I don't know how many, there's just some things in here about, what they need to contain. That's been proved by the legal, and no comments received on that so far from anyone else. And then occupancy restrictions, this one's a little, there's some interesting parts of this. I personally wanted to talk to the attorney about this because we're referencing adults, and we reference at one point children, but we
Right.
probably ought to define what an adult
Versus a
is
child.
and child, because of the fact that we're talking about, we're assuming one's gonna be bigger, one's gonna be smaller, right? So that was one thing I had meant to follow up with them about. And then Mr. Eicholtz actually had the same other question I had, which is when you get to number 3 here, a maximum of 2 additional adult persons shall be permitted in addition to those permitted by subsection A or B. My question was, why?
Right.
And he had a similar kind of, I think he was just confused, like, why? He says, I don't know what this means, I think it needs to be taken out. And that's kind of what I thought also. I'm like, what's the reason for this? So I was gonna ask about that, before it comes back to the zoning commission, because I would like to understand what the thought process is on that. I'm not sure, even when that was drafted before it went to legal counsel, I had flagged it, and then when it came back, I was like,
Yeah, if
most
you're
of my
gonna say-
comments got addressed, but that one didn't get addressed.
It is, so what are we, let's go to, what we're talking about, short occupancy. So 1, 2 adult persons permitted for each guest room containing a floor area of greater than 70 square feet. But then these additional 2, so wouldn't you just be moving that to 4?
Yeah. So
Basically.
It
And
makes one,
then,
it
and
makes,
then
it makes
in
1 and
number
2.
2, it would make 1 person to 3 per.
I don't know why we wouldn't have just
Yeah.
awarded it and taken it out.
Take it out.
It was
Yeah, I
really
think it should be
confusing for me, and apparently for him too. And then it doesn't reference anything about kids until you get to the very end. So the whole section seems like
Well, 70,
needs some work.
70 square feet, trying to fit 4 adults in there.
Well, you can do it, but
You can if it's just nothing but beds.
yeah,
I mean, that's a lot of the lake rentals are that way,
right.
where it's just
Bunk
nothing
beds
but
or
bunk
something,
beds.
yeah. Yeah, so that section probably needs some work, and I was gonna call her, about that, because that was one of the ones that I never got a good answer on. Usually there's comments in the side.
Right.
That was one of the ones that didn't have a comment in the side. So I think we'll probably have to do some adjustment on that one no matter what. And that was one of the 2 main areas that I flagged as maybe needing some work. The parking requirements are pretty consistent with what we would have really anywhere for that type of thing.
I was thinking seems light to me, one off-street parking space per 2 guest room, is that to be implied bedroom, or?
So that's off-street, so that's not counting your on the
Right.
street where you might be allowed to have that. But
It's-
we're also gonna use the, when we look at those, when we're doing permits on those, we're gonna make sure they have enough room for parking.
Okay,
Yeah.
We'll have to do a permit, so
okay,
we can always make it worse. Generally, for parking, people want way more parking than what they need. This is one of the few exceptions where it might be the other way around.
right.
Chronic nuisances. Now, this is one I may have to go back to because it seems to tie in with the very end K. I like the idea, but it seems like it's in here twice and is redundant. And this is where Mr. Eicholtz had most of his comments. So the idea is that, and I brought this up because the BZA brought up, what do we do if somebody has multiple issues?
Right.
You know, calls that are verified on a property? What can we do? Can they lose their permit? Can they lose their conditional approval? That's why this got put in here. I think that was agreed that was a good idea. The number could change and the way that it's enforced could change a little bit, but, basically, if there are more than two calls for service concerning unlawful activities, I think we need to show that that have been verified, okay? Because just because they got a call doesn't mean it was verified. But I think if we got two calls that were verified, that there were unlawful conditions taking place within a 12-month period, that's considered to be a nuisance and is also subject to K, which we'll come to here in a minute. So that was the idea. If we have to go out there and address something and it's been a problem and it's been verified, that's when you're considered a nuisance. That's when these other things take place. Now, Mr. Eicholt's comments, he had some other things in here related to that as far as like how he might want to see that worded. He had a definition here, verification, notice and opportunity to respond. But at the same time, that process that he's outlining, I don't know that he realized that that's fairly similar to what we have in K. Because if someone doesn't agree with how this is being done, they can always go to the Board of
Right, they
Zoning
have a-
Appeals
Right, they
about
have a
how the
cost.
staff has enforced it. So what he's really after, for the most part, I think is already kind of in the draft code. It's just maybe not exactly the way he looked at having it set up. And he would still have the right, or anyone that wanted to do that would still have the opportunity to respond, and do these other things that he's got drafted in here.
Right, there's a remedy available.
Yes, yes.
I mean, I think part of what hurts it is D and K are so far away from each other.
Yes.
And so
That was my other main.
they're not necessarily inconsistent. It's just they're separated by space instead of being included together.
So
Yeah, I think maybe they should be,
Back to
Yeah, it
back.
should be in
together
one,
more.
they should be,
either
here's-
come,
They-
here's
they
K
should
for
run right
what we're
together.
Trying to follow.
yeah.
Yeah, they should run right together.
but also it's like, does unlawful conduct mean there have to be criminal charges pressed on somebody or?
No, I'm thinking
so-
I'm thinking citation.
Okay.
Whether it be zoning citation or the cops citing them for like a noise issue or something.
Well, some greater specificity there would probably help that.
But I think
If we're
one
talking
thing,
ordinance violations or zoning resolution violations, then that makes sense. I agree with that.
so I think adding some language that acknowledges that it's been verified,
Yes.
and maybe an acknowledgement that there's like some sort of written letter or citation.
There has to be some documentation.
Yes, would be good. So I'm gonna put in here, needs to be verified. And include citation and/or written, what would you say, written,
Notification. I don't know how you would word that.
no, well, you could say written notification of unlawful or illegal activity or whatever, unlawful conduct.
Yep.
And I'll just use that terminology, it's already in there. And then I'll put in here, combine
Yeah, D and K.
D and K together.
D and K that was really the other main thing I had flagged to talk to the attorney about. I think in the first draft, what happened was my notes were maybe somewhere in this area, or they were at the end, and I think it might have been the end, because I think I had 3 notes at the end, and I think there was a lot added at the end because I had general questions, and I think maybe there was kind of a section in here that addressed it, it just wasn't like what you see in K where there's a lot more meat to it.
Right.
So I think that's probably how that happened.
Okay, so does that conclude the report on proposed
Yeah, other
Article
than
6
that,
changes?
let me see if I had anything else here. We have emergency contact information required to be there.
Right.
You know, Mr. Eichholz didn't necessarily want to have to put an email or address on there. The email, I think you could just make an email up in case you have those kind of problems. I didn't see a
Right.
problem with that.
I mean, if you're running a business, that's not a big ask.
No, I don't think so. The address, it depends, you know, if you're, I mean, the biggest thing that people need probably are the phone number. There probably ought to be an address on file with the emergency providers at least. The other sections here, there's a zoning permit required. Obviously, if the conditional use is permitted, there's an annual inspection that would be required, which is an important thing. We made sure that was in there. Just to make sure that these things are not being run down.
Right.
Another important thing in here is participation in the NCA, new community authority. At the very end of that, proof of filing state lodging tax must be provided within 6 months of date of issuance for the zoning permit. So if these places are gonna be treated like they're gonna be similar
Right.
in use to something like a smaller scale hotel or bed and breakfast or something in between, then let's treat them like that, is basically the approach. And then again, K, basically to set forth, like if these things happen, the conditional use can be revoked, sets forth the appeal process basically a little bit, and then basically says you have to address anything that might be considered a nuisance before you can reapply for, you know, same site to be considered for that in the future. And then by reference, that also gets carried over into the R1 area for conditional uses under section 622 and to in section 662, the conditional use area there. And that's for business districts where you probably have multifamily. And that's it,
Okay.
because I already went over the definitions.
Yep.
Yep.
So at this point, I will invite members of the public who would like to speak on this, specifically on, we're just discussing potential changes for Article 6, short-term rentals. If you could please state your name.
Sure.
for the record.
My name is Michael Clenny. I go by Mac. I live at 4313 Redcoat Drive. It's directly behind the property at 813 Massachusetts. I'm sorry, I don't have my notes up quite yet. My wife Emily spoke on our behalf last meeting when we were first discussing this even existing. Mr. Eichholz was here to give his testimony as well. First question I have before I kind of get into some of the things I have is I was curious why Mr. Eichholz is already involved in drafting the language. It seems like it's in his best interest to have this say certain things. I'm just curious why
So
he's already has it in.
when I posted this information all on the website and sent it to the board
Okay.
about a week ago, and when I did that, he'd asked whenever we post it for me to send it to him.
Okay.
And so I let him know that it was posted. So he looked at what we had online, which is what I'm looking at now. It's been there for about a week.
Yeah.
And that's what he went through, and he provided his comments. And he
Okay.
emailed them to me, yesterday? I sent them to you guys, I think?
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Just checking out on that. That struck me. So you'll have to excuse my ignorance on zoning issues in general and what, you're legally capable of controlling within the language of the articles here versus other broader things. But one of the things that I was thinking and wrote, under Ohio Revised Code, section 3731.01, these properties do not qualify as hotels, which require 5 or more guest rooms. Because of that, they're exempt from Clermont County lodging tax, which typically funds oversight and enforcement. That 3% of that, of course, comes back to Union Township in those cases. 7%, 3%. It only applies to establishments with 5 or more guest rooms. So nearly all the short-term rentals in Union Township that currently exist are single-family homes or a room inside of another home with fewer than 5 rooms, which means none of that lodging tax revenue makes it back to Union Township. And there's no public record showing otherwise, if I'm mistaken there, but that was just what my research told me. Meanwhile, the township will absorb all the costs of complaints and follow-ups, zoning inspection, police responses, fire inspection, noise, parking issues, potential legal action, without receiving a single dollar from the lodging tax revenue to offset that, those expenses. So in effect, this amendment authorizes a commercial use that consumes public resources without contributing to them. And without a funding mechanism for enforcement, the costs fall squarely on taxpayers. And that's not really a sustainable approach. Provides no net benefit to the community, especially a specifically residentially zoned community such as the one I live in. Families like mine chose to live in Union Township because it is residential, stable, and supported by parks, schools, local services. We wanted to live amongst neighbors and look out for one another and not necessarily manage the daily effects of the business next door. So as far as like the language in here and the sorts of things that you guys have control over, Township zoning resolution, Article 2, Sections 250 to 255 already give the zoning director the authority to investigate violations and take action. And while this proposed language requires documentation at the time of application, it provides no ongoing inspection or verification process. So for example, you're talking about some of the pool rules. One of the things that I think is either in this language or it's in another section has to do with fencing around the pool and maintaining closed doors. On my way here tonight, one of those fences were open and accessible to the pool behind there. So I just, one of the things I said is, as written, residents are left to contact the property owner, reach out to the zoning board for complaint, which the property owner does not live on site. And the only other option is to call the police, which is an excessive and inappropriate use of emergency service for routine nuisance issues. And this effectively turns neighbors into the day-to-day enforcement arm of this amendment, placing an unfair and unsustainable burden on those residents. Zoning should protect the neighbors, not depend on them to police themselves. I can get long-winded here, so I apologize. Just as far as some of the things that I thought could go into this, if this is something that is planned on moving forward. At the very least, if there are ways to look into more mixed-use zones that already include businesses and residential as a part of a blended use areas, they are more already more set up for the kinds of things you'd see with business and housing living next to each other, more tolerant of that sort of traffic and noise and event capacity. So the house that we live behind is often used as an event space. It's got a basketball court, a pool, grill, fire pit. I mean, it's really nice. I could understand why you would want to rent it out for your family. But it becomes an event space inside of a quiet residential neighborhood where you have retirees amongst children living there. So my thought is if there's specificity in here that could be written in on the exact types of zones that these could exist. And then as far as reaching the limits of my knowledge of how much power you guys have over this kind of stuff, my biggest thing was trying to understand if there's a way to request a partnership with Clermont County Auditor, a Board of Trustees to explore options for capturing revenue from the short-term rentals. It seems like a massive, I don't want to say loss, but to not capture that tax revenue from these businesses that are operating like hotels and bed and breakfasts where you are getting that tax revenue, it feels wrong, I guess.
So, just so you know, we have a
Yeah.
provision in here to address that. That's
Okay,
what,
is that what the NCA is?
yes, so at the very
State
end of
lodging
that,
tax?
that's where you see, the state lodging tax to be provided within proof of state lodging. That's this whole section right here.
I wasn't sure how much that funneled back into Union Township, or if that just went
It
to
would be the
state.
same amount that would be
For a hotel.
like,
Would it?
for a hotel,
Okay.
whatever that amount would be.
Let me ask a question though, if it's under 5 units, does that make them exempt?
Not from this.
Okay, so putting
The
that in
reason
there
for this being in here.
supersedes that 5 and under.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the new community authority is a relatively, it's an old tool
Right.
that is seeing
Found
some
new
new
use.
uses.
Mhm.
And
That was
someone
what I saw in
who,
some of my
So
research.
yeah,
So-
your first thing is addressed by that
Okay.
bullet point.
yeah, so the new community authority, it was recently enacted here. If a conditional use is approved for a location, as a part of that, the owner has to agree to be in the NCA. And
Abide
then
by
as a
the
part
rules.
of that, they have to provide proof, that they have filed with the state for the state lodgings tax. The first time will be the hardest for us to figure out how to get everything set up right. And then once you get it done the first time, right, because you've never done it before, then it's easy after that, because you're just following what you did the first time.
Sure.
So, we have the NCA set up, everything's ready for it to go. We have agreements where we've also made other people sign on to be in the NCA, not for this purpose, but for other things. But that is to address the point that you're making, because yes, we probably will have some similar issues that we would have with a hotel or bed and breakfast. So that part we are trying to address, for sure. One of the other points that you made, as far as like the areas that they need to go, is probably one of the main things that we need to consider.
Yeah.
Which is, do we allow them in the ER, the R1, and the R2? I don't know that people are gonna argue about them being in the business districts or the planned development districts where people
Right.
come in and say, this is part of what we're gonna do anyways.
Right.
It's the ER, R1, and R2 areas. And the other thing that you could do, other than by strictly allowing them by zone, is maybe try to designate them. Like, one thought I threw out earlier today, as I was talking to somebody, was, maybe you allow them, or some kind of acknowledgement that you allow them more along what you consider to be your arterial and collector roads, because those are usually your more high volume roads, instead of like your sleepy local collector roads, right, which are mostly like in your interior subdivision. I don't know if that's 100% the answer, but maybe not having them in the heart of your neighborhoods is kind of like what people are more concerned about, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I was going here is just thinking distance, the space between residential properties, one of the issues that we have, because it's not an official nuisance, it's not police worthy, but it's the fact that families are there on vacation, and so on a Tuesday afternoon, we're working from home, or there's kids screaming, they're out playing in the pool, and they're on their vacation, and like, perfectly understandable, and it's not, I'm not gonna call the police or email the zoning board and say, hey, there's a family here having fun. But it's a quiet neighborhood street, no one else is doing that, or throwing those parties all days of the week, and then that family's gone in 3 days, and then it's the next one, and it's just kind of a continual pattern. So, something like that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I mean, my thought was just, what of these businesses at what point are they a net benefit or a net detriment to the neighborhoods, right? And I can understand the need for them if there's not enough hotel accommodations in the area, or we want to promote tourism. And at the same time, at what point do they cause issues and problems within those R1, R2, like deep residential neighborhoods and areas? So those are just some of the considerations that we've been making.
Yeah, and I would say if you have any suggestions or thoughts about the draft text or I mean, even for the other people here,
Yep.
that helps us do our job when you give us a potential solution and instead of just saying, we don't like this, because
Right.
a lot of times, like, you know, my job over the last 27 years, like, people just tell us what they don't like. They don't really tell us, like, why don't you do this way, or
Right.
think about this?
Yep.
So what I did at the meeting that we had with Mr. Reichholz is I wrote down some of the things that people talked about, and that's how we ended up with some of the stuff that's in here.
Yeah.
Like what if we have a chronic nuisance thing, right?
Makes
So
a lot
when
of
people
sense.
give us that kind of a feedback, I try to make sure, if it's good feedback, we document it and try to do something with it.
Oftentimes zoning is trying to clarify the relationship between an individual property owner with property rights and the community as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just to clarify our role, we are tasked with making recommendations to the Union Township trustees on two spheres of issues. One is a zoning map amendment. So you want to change the zoning of your property to something else. And making recommendations regarding changes to the zoning resolutions. So this board is actually not responsible for granting conditional uses. That would be the BZA, the Board of Zoning Appeals. So they're more closely related to granting conditional uses and also enforcement of things. So tonight's meeting, this section of the meeting is about discussing, so it's pretty informal. Eventually,
Yeah.
If staff comes to us with a more crystallized proposal, we have a meeting like this, except it ends with a motion to recommend approval, or a motion that recommends approval subject to our conditional recommendations, or just denial. We don't want to do it. The Board of Trustees is vested with the authority to do what they will with our recommendation.
Sure.
They could approve it as staff gives it to them, they could take our recommendations on board and adopt that, or they could ignore our denial, or they could deny. So the real authority rests with the township trustees. We're just a board that, we're just citizens of the
Just give our
township, so
advice.
we just
Yeah.
give advice, and
Yeah.
some of us have been doing it for a while.
And a
Yeah.
lot of things that come before it, we have denied. I mean, if something does not make sense, it gets kicked out and go back and redo your plan and come back.
Rework it.
Yeah, but that's what we do.
I
No,
would
I
add
appreciate
too, that
that.
the Board of Zoning Appeals is a judicial
Yeah.
board, and
Correct.
they make a decision at that time. They determine and make decisions and
Sure.
vote on things, and it's carried out. you
Yeah.
know, So,
No, I appreciate the education on that too. You know, I did some research here, but I'm still learning and trying to get involved as much as possible. So I appreciate your time. I don't mean to hog the time anymore than I have to, but I like some of your thoughts about zoning and thinking through that, and the
Well,
pools as well.
and-
If that fence could stay closed, that would really help.
And
We
another,
have two very young children, I worry about.
and another point that you brought up is enforcement of this.
Yeah.
So this whole review process, and having to cooperate with those terms is also considered as part of this, part of the ideas that are written here.
Well, to his concern on the gate, can we put some language in the gate thing about a self-closing?
It should be
We
there.
could,
It
so the
should be
other,
self-closing anyway, shouldn't it?
I've been out there, and the only other thing that I know that there's a gate there. The only thing I don't know, with pools, you can put a cover on them.
Sure.
And you're
There is
allowed-
a cover on it
And you're
right
allowed to
now,
put a
so-
cover on them, but, and so if it holds a certain amount of weight, and I think, and I'm not a building code expert, but I believe it's like 400 pounds, because you have to hold the snow load, and they want to make sure that if a kid crawls on there, they don't
Yeah,
fall
they
in.
don't fall through.
If it's attached right, even if you have the fence or gate, the cover will cancel the need for it, even though you could still have it to make everybody feel warm and fuzzy, make your insurance feel happier too. But I don't know in that particular pool, I think he's got a cover, but does it meet that 400-pound rule or whatever the code is?
Right.
I don't know. I don't think his intention is to probably leave the gate open.
No, yeah.
The last time that we found out that the gate was open, I think that your wife had called, and I think they took care of it in a short amount of time. I think there was actually something wrong with the door or panel or whatever that he
The
had to
wind
have
likes to
fixed or
take it,
whatever.
I think, yeah.
But, you know, like you made a point earlier about like, well, we shouldn't have to tell our neighbors what's going on. in a lot of our zoning enforcement cases, that's literally part of what has to happen, because we only have one zoning inspector, and even if we hired 4 more and they drove around all day long, the problem is you have to catch someone, just like a cop does, in the act of doing something wrong. And if you don't go there in that one period of time that it's happening, it's like it never happened. So even as a neighbor where I live, and everywhere, like, unfortunately, part of the enforcement of the zoning code is we are reliant, the community is reliant on the people telling us, like, hey, here's what's going on. Because, you know, like as another example, we would never know that your neighbor has chickens in some cases unless we were out there, you know, the couple minutes they're leaving them out, unless they're egregiously leaving them out there all day long.
Right.
There's a bunch of codes that are like that, and I've done a lot of code enforcement work myself, and I would maybe go out and visit a property 2-3 times, and if I couldn't find it by 3 times, unless the person was really telling me like this is insistently happening, like I would have to tell them, like, we have other things we gotta work on, like I can't come out and visit something forever and not be able to cite it.
Right.
So that's gonna be a problem, really, no matter what, whether it's a short-term rental issue or your neighbor has chickens or whatever, you know?
Right.
I can't promise you that part won't go away, because we are reliant, unfortunately. And it wouldn't matter whether we had more staff or not, we still would be reliant to some degree on the neighbors tell us what's going on, because
Yeah.
you're there all the time. We're only gonna be there maybe a couple times a week,
Sure.
so.
I get that, yeah. Well,
The-
it's just good.
It's about writing rules that we can enforce, that makes sense. Because if the rules look good on paper, but they're hard to, or impossible to enforce, then they're not worth the paper they're written on.
Yeah. Well, if it helps at all, I think more specificity around nuisance in general would help, and just to give a couple examples of situations that could have arisen that we weren't sure about. We've had trespass at least 3 documented times, so they've come onto our yard for various things. One was a drone, I don't even know what another
Basketball,
guy, yeah, another one's a basketball, which, you know, fine, but, so there's at least 3 documented cases of that. There was a fireworks issue, I think, it was 4th of July, so obviously there's leniency, there's laws around that, but this one went on till like 1, 2 in the morning, and they were right next to the fence. I mean, it was just that kind of thing. I've got other documented situations, but I guess more specificity around what nuisance really applies, and whether it's like, has to be an active police call, or even when we do text, I mean, there were some people that were sleeping in his backyard, and that we could see from our bedroom window. You know, I'm not trying to like spy down there and see what's going on, but you open your window shades and there's people drunk sleeping on the benches back there, and it's like, okay, just so you know, like, you know, I gotta text him and let him know, and like, we're trying to establish a relationship with him and like make things work, but it's just, yeah, anyway, more specificity around that would probably help us a lot, that's for sure.
I'll just add, I do appreciate your comments, and it is, I think for me, this is new, and you need to do some research on it and find out,
Yeah.
but I do appreciate your comments.
Well, thank you for allowing me to speak. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Would anyone else like to speak on this subject?
Well, we couldn't hardly hear anything back there, but hopefully you can now.
Please state your name.
Mel Berman, address 830 Massachusetts Drive, Cincinnati 45245. Okay, I'll follow up after him about the notification. There was very little notification. If I hadn't talked to somebody on the Board of Appeals, I wouldn't even known about it. Now, prior, when we had that other meeting, there was signs put in Mr. Eicholt's yard that let everybody know.
Well, sir, this isn't about that particular instance. This is about a proposed
I
zoning
understand that,
resolution.
but it's still about notification. There was no signs, nothing.
So the reason for that is when we have a case that involves property, the law requires that we have to send letters to the adjoining property owners.
Yeah,
And
that's
in-
right, I got a letter.
And in addition to that, we notify, even though we don't have to, everyone within 200 feet, and we post the signs, and, of course, we put it on the website as well. This is not a case property-specific thing, so when there is a proposed change to the codes, whether it's a township code or the zoning resolution, which is a part of the township code, there's no law to say you have to send notices to the property owners, and who it impacts is potentially really anybody in the township, so there's no requirement to send a mailer out to every single property owner in the township, and it's that way across the state of Ohio in every jurisdiction. And if we put a public hearing sign out, where would we put a public hearing sign out? We did put an ad in the paper, which is where you always have to put the ad in the paper, and we did put it on the website. If anybody were to tell me they wanted me to try to contact them, I would put them on a list and I would email them. But, you know, there's no, not, when we have cases, it's very clear who you contact. When we have changes in the code, that conceivably is everyone in the, like, every property owner in the township. And there's unfortunately no good mechanism to contact everybody in the township because you can't very well
I
send a letter out
understand
for
that.
everybody. I mean, that's the only answer I can give you.
But there would have been more neighbors here had they known about it.
Sure. We're gonna have more
And then,
meetings.
I was gonna say, this is just a second step in many meetings. This is not a case yet.
There's no motion made, there's no recommendation made by, official
yeah,
recommendation.
I
made by the
understand, but
commission.
still people would like to attend to hear what's going on. And then I have, the other thing is, the appeal board denied this usage. And it still has been going on. There was no time limit put on when it was gonna stop.
Not by the board, but I've called him and had told him he needs to
Okay.
stop allowing any more,
And then I heard the property was gonna be for sale, which it is for sale right now.
I don't know that it is at this moment. He had it listed for a short
It
period
was
of time.
listed as for sale by owner,
Yep.
because I talked to him personally, and he basically said he wanted to get out of it, get rid of it.
That's what he told me. But, I mean, I think he put it up for sale, and I think when it didn't sell within the first couple weeks or whatever, he said he wanted to have it listed whenever the pool could be visible and used for people, is what he told me.
So is he still allowed to be doing rentals?
What we told him is not to book anything out beyond what he already had booked out.
Yeah, how far does that go out?
I think he told us at the meeting, he was booked out like up to 90 days or something.
Okay.
So I think, if I remember right at the meeting, that was like before the end of the year or something.
Yeah.
End of the year, first of the year.
And I think, he was actually in violation for ever starting it without contacting the zoning board. He's been flying under the radar.
Yeah, I'm
Sure.
sure. Well, can I say something?
Yeah,
So we're here to talk about the draft text to address not only his situation, but everybody else's situation, because we know these exist in Union Township. We don't have somebody sitting at the computer going after everybody for them, okay? That would be similar to a cop literally pulling over everybody they could speeding and ticketing them for that. So we're aware there's a problem. I've talked to him a couple of times. He's not indicated that he's not gonna work with us. But at the same time, like, we're not here to discuss the merits of his property or his case, because it's already been turned down and we are already trying to get him to stop booking, right?
Yeah, we just need to confine our comments to this proposal.
Yes,
I know that there's been conversation about Mr. Eichel. I'm not a member of the BZA.
Exactly.
We're working on this.
I understand, you're not
We're
the
working
final-
on this potential text
the
amendment.
final
Yeah, we're just trying
decision.
to make sure the regulations are in place.
But I
that
thought
the
when
day
the
comes
appeal
where we have
board-
to have these.
Denied it,
Again, we're
that,
not
that would
gonna
end it
talk.
until you guys make a decision,
We're not making a decision.
Well, and we
or
don't,
somebody.
so we're not gonna talk more about a BZA case because it's really outside of our purview to talk about that. If members of the public have thoughts about this proposal text amendment for short-term rentals, we're interested to hear about that. If you've got complaints about enforcement issues with a particular resident, that's something that can be directed to Mr. McCormack outside of this.
yeah, I don't
meeting.
have a problem talking about it to you at all. I just, like, this meeting in this forum is not the best place.
Okay, it's not the
time to
right
do that.
place.
Yeah, this-
So if
this
you want
is-
to call me, I can tell you exactly where we're at. I don't have a problem in doing that. It's not that we're not doing anything or we haven't talked to him, that's not the case. We have expressed to him there's a time, there's a limit. But at the same time, like, we're trying to be reasonable with him, knowing that he had stuff already booked, and at the same time, understand what our legal process would be if we were to go after it. Because you have to understand the amount of time, by the time we file a case, it's not like we go to court right away. It takes months to go to court on stuff. So even if we told him, like, you've got to be done, by the time we file, it's going to be January at
Yeah.
the best anyways, before we could even
Well,
have
okay, if
anything in
the
there.
property's sold, then it would be the end of it, right?
That would take care of it.
You know,
This is mainly if the short-term rentals come to fruition
Oh,
at
you're
some
gonna
point in
do-
time, we can properly regulate, tax it properly, do the right things at that point, because right now, there's no regulation in place whatsoever.
well, another thing was, I've talked to some people that are in the Westchester area, and they do not allow any of it.
That could be where we end up landing. Right.
Okay,
By all means.
Yeah, there's no, this is
That-
just.
it-
I know it's a possibility.
It's part of
so-
the point of
It
these
could, it
meetings.
could be to the point where 10 years from now, that they cannot do business here in that form or fashion. So that, we're not there yet,
All right.
you know? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, this is, right now, we've got it drafted like we may allow them. Now that, where we allow them,
Yeah.
it may get pared down some.
It still has to be approved as a case.
And even if we pass something, you don't really know what's gonna happen until you pass something and it's in effect for a little while. And if you find that when a new law is in effect and it's not working out well, you always have
gotta
the
go back and
ability to
fix it.
change it or get rid of it.
Okay, has there been any other cases come up, or is this just
For Airbnb types, this is the
in
only,
in the township? This is the first.
yep.
We're aware, some of us were aware.
Well, there may
of
be others,
There might be
yeah, there may be others
others operating, we have
operating,
no
but
idea.
there are no
There's
other
others
cases.
operating.
Yeah, well, he was operating
So-
illegal.
Yeah.
So just so you know, in the 3 years that I've been here, that's the only one that I have ever heard of a complaint, and it was the one in Massachusetts in Redcoat. And when he came in, he talked to us, and when he talked to us, we found out, because he admitted, without us even asking, that he had 2 more.
Yeah.
So, it's not that he, at least in the time that I've dealt with him, like, it's not like he was trying to hide it. But at the same time, like, when we got him for 1 and we knew there were 3,
It went on.
we had to go after all 3.
Right.
And address all 3, and that's why he came in. But as I was saying earlier,
That's-
we could get on those websites and put somebody on there and just go after people all day long. That's an impossible task to do.
Yeah, I
when you only have
understand that.
one zoning inspector.
I just, I felt like he should have came to the board. He put the cart before the horse.
Yes, he
Okay.
should have come in before he did what he did. That would have made
He
his
he
life easier.
didn't
and-
follow what he should have done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now, he's invested a lot of money in his property, which that's not the neighbor's problem. So,
Yeah, it definitely would have made it a lot easier for
right,
everybody if he would
he
have
should
come
have
in.
got
Follow the
approval
rules.
before this ever started, and then he would have known what road he had to take.
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak regarding this particular issue? Hi. Come on up.
First thing is, this is new for you guys too, and thinking about it and just sharing what I've learned, both in Hawaii a few years ago, which is a very popular tourist place, and in Colorado this summer. These rentals are causing serious housing problems. And a lot of these meetings are talking about the reason that they're letting developments, PDs, whatever they're called, put houses on little 1/8 lots is because of the need for more affordable housing. But then when you do the rentals, it runs people out. Specifically in Key West, that has other issues, and Hawaii is, there's such tourist place, it was creating homelessness because there was nowhere to go and the prices were so outrageous. Conversations we had in Colorado this summer with some shop owners, restaurant owners, is they can't find workers because the young people are leaving as soon as they're able because they are making no money. They don't necessarily want to leave home, but they can't have a job because the money they make doesn't pay for the rent and leave them anything to ever get out and buy their own home because they're having to. And some of these are adults who are living with other people when they want to be independent, but they cannot be independent in their home. And it's a real serious housing problem. And going to, I don't know, it was a Batavia Township meeting or a commissioners meeting, they were saying things like the projection is in 10 years, they're going to need, I don't know, some ungodly amount of housing. But do we really have a housing shortage, or do we have these planning problems and usage problems that are creating housing problems? Because if you have, just anybody can do a rental and nobody's living here. And I believe it was in Colorado where one of the shop owners was talking, and one of the requirements that they had heard, maybe New York, some other tourist place, was that you cannot have a rental if you don't live at least in that state. Like you can't go to New York and buy property and then go live out in the country away from all of that mess and then let your rental. They require property owners to live in the state, live in the county. They can't be like 2,000 miles away. So just putting that out there, you may already know that, but if this is the beginning of conversations, that's something that I've encountered talking to people who, whole communities are affected by these Airbnb situations. And if we participate in that, in Batavia Township, we are gonna have will you still have people to fulfill jobs? And were you gonna increase the homeless situation? Because of the rentals. And I believe I read that they are building some kind of a residential thing up near Clermont Hospital for the sole purpose of housing nurses, and because there aren't a lot of options for them to live in. So here again, you have these planned communities where people can't choose where they live. You're developing places, kind of telling people where they have to live and how they have to live. So that was that. Is there a reason that the definition of a short term is 30 days, or less than 30 days and not 30 days? Some people rent for whole months. Does it change the?
Yeah, it's like for 30 days or more.
Usually more than 30 days, you're required to have a lease, so that would disqualify it from a short-term rental.
Would that be a benefit? Because people do rent for 30 days, they'll be go on vacation for a
No,
month.
if it's for a longer period of time, that's when they're not considered short-term rentals.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, okay, so it's already in the
So
books
that's
gotcha.
like a normal renting a house
Okay.
kind of lease.
I thought I read somewhere that whoever was kind of managing the property has to be no more than an hour away. Do you think that's too long? I don't remember where I read that. Again, that could be someone over in northern Kentucky if you're an hour away. It could be someone possibly in Indiana if it's an hour away.
I've landlorded houses, not willingly, but for people years ago, that I was over an hour and away, and it was more of a burden to me than it was to the other property owners to have to go clear a toilet at 3 a.m.
Oh, I was
So-
thinking more of the nuisance factor for
But
controlling
even
that.
so, it's,
the owner doesn't necessarily have
It's
to be
the
an
manager.
hour away. They have to have someone
Yeah.
designated for
Representative.
emergencies within an hour. So that does allow someone who might be out of town or might live further away to have another person designated for
For property
emergencies.
management.
Yeah, it's someone using a property management company to run it.
Right.
I was just wondering if it would be better for the township not to have someone that, an hour away, if that would be a stipulation. My big thing was the housing. That was a state resident. I liked his text question. Are these, and I think you addressed that these may not always be allowed everywhere. You may look at them just being near, you know, the abandoned mall or over near TQL or somewhere in this more populated.
So right now, the way it's drafted is they would be allowed in state residential and R1 and R2 zoning districts, and then also business districts, and they could potentially be allowed through the planned development districts where someone has brought in a proposal for something that might be more business-like or multi-use, or, you know, let's say for an amended application or new application where they accounted for this use from the start or after the fact as an amendment. So that would be,
So
I
at the
think-
so at the moment, everything's on the table.
Yeah, that's what I got
But there's
from-
further discussion. When we close public comment, the commissioners will continue to discuss this.
We're crawling right now, we're not even walking.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to share what.
Oh, for sure.
I was aware of.
absolutely.
What was that? Oh, I've been to a Port Authority meeting or two, and I realized that they either own print, anyway, they have a couple proposals coming to them for multifamily. So if that, since they're in the township, would they fall under those tax rules that the other gentlemen, or are they under a different governance?
well, if it's the port group, there's no, well, there is a piece of, over the high school project, I think the port might have something to do with one of the projects that's already underway over there, but that project is what it is, and the port being involved doesn't change the use and unit count of what's over there. So like, the high school site, we have a lot of units being built over there. Everything pretty much is in alignment with whatever was approved a few years back. We've not had any new multifamily units approved other than the site that was over there near where I think you said your family has land, and that's that Shawnee
Yeah,
station place. And most of those units are on the Batavia side. Almost all of them are.
yes, those are
So-
my parents.
That's the only new multifamily, even on a small scale, that we've had in the last 3 years that wasn't already approved before I started. We have had other people bring in a couple applications, but they haven't been successful. The only one that's been successful is the one right there at the Union Township, Batavia Township line.
Yeah,
Everything else is a continuation of what was already underway before I started 3 years ago. And also really kind of coincides with when we had the newer trustees voted in that same year.
Yeah, I think much of that is none of us were commissioners then.
Really?
I think for a lot, well,
I-
Mr. Lewis.
before my
So
time.
I remember the one down on Teal Town, the
Redwood?
Redwood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
that's true.
did,
We
that
did that
was,
one.
but that was more than 3 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
We're still seeing some
And
of
Shawnee
the
Station.
build out
Yeah.
of Redwood also, but those were, everything, really everything that we've seen the last 3 years has just been stuff that was already approved previously.
so it can take that long for
Oh, yeah.
something to get started.
Or,
Oh, I was
well,
hoping they'd change their mind.
They
about-
break up into phases, so like you may have seen phase 1 or phase 2, and sometimes they'll have, you know, half a dozen phases or more. So, you know, I ran into somebody the other day that said they were gonna do the next phase of Redwood, I think over by the high school or something. So yeah, they still have, where they brought in the original plan, they had the whole thing shown, but when they actually break it up to build and finance it, they break it up into however many pieces they need to break it up into, so, yeah. That's. we-
Although we did recommend a zoning resolution change for
Right.
lingering PDs.
Yes, there is a
To help to correct that.
So that we
lingering
cannot drag it
PDs and
on.
overlays, there's more of a tighter time window on those things now. But as long as they're starting and getting things done within a certain amount of time, they get more time. They have to keep moving it along. The ones were here, sitting here, and we weren't getting anywhere with them, those are now expiring. And when those happen, they have to come back in and start the whole process over again.
But we have gotten off subject. So we have to get back to short-term rentals.
Does the lighting thing go with a pre-approved PD or zoning, approvals? Are they still bound by the covered lighting and the downward lighting? Is
That
that,
part they are.
Yes.
They would not be subject to the newer code because it's not in effect yet, but the current lighting that we see for projects has to be downward facing and shielded. And we are making them give us a photometric plan so that the property lines and that the right-of-way lines were meeting that half-foot candle number. It's just, we're now putting it in writing what that half-foot candle number and some of these other things that we don't have in there.
We're just tightening it
yeah.
up.
I think that's the only things I had about the thing, but the homelessness and the people leaving the area is a big problem, and it's a growing problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, all members of the public who remain in the room have already spoken, so we'll close this public section. Now, we do have one more topic for discussion, which is going to be managed natural landscapes. And again, it's a discussion, it's not a case. So if anyone wants to stick around for that, you're more than welcome. But
I was
let's,
gonna make some adjustments and call about the things that I told you I would call about. So
Okay.
we will clean this up.
Table it.
Talk to the attorney about the two areas that I told
Yeah.
you we would talk about. And then what you'll see when it comes back with from the trustees is a cleaned up version. Hopefully it addresses some of those things. Some of these things that we're talking about may not get addressed as far as like, you know, is the board gonna make a recommendation about not allowing them in some of the areas that we're drafted for now?
Right.
That may not happen until the next meeting. That ultimately may be something that the trustees are gonna have to make a decision on. Well, and the other thing is, even if we allow them initially in some of these places, we may find that, okay,
right.
we may need to scale it back, or vice versa. If we cut them out early, and then we decide, well, maybe we should allow one more area, you know, we might be able to.
Well, unfortunately, we
Subtract and then add.
we don't have a lot of statistics because
not allowed.
if we knew where they were, then we would be able to better sort this. And I definitely have concerns about allowing them to continue or to exist in R1.
They're,
I,
they're on my road.
ER, I kind of understand because ER by its necessity, you've got a lot of distance.
I was thinking the same thing. I don't know if it's by density or how, but I agree with you, the R1, R2, you know, I'm thinking where they can be placed or where they can be used is the big thing, in my opinion.
And it really comes down to is we're trying to juggle property owner rights versus benefit to the community.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
As always.
Yep.
yeah, you know, my personal opinion, I don't want a rental next to me, but.
I'm a little old school. I'll just go to the Holiday Inn. I'm fine.
Right. Yeah, they got a bigger pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I sense, in that we don't get a lot of people coming to zoning commission meetings to talk about areas of discussion only. I mean, we don't get a lot on text amendments when it's a case.
Right.
Usually, just generally, public participation is a lot. So the fact that we've had multiple members of the public speak on this issue. Now, granted,
It's based on one property.
it's based on one
Yeah.
particular property, which was the subject of a BZA case, and so we don't really need to read.
There were three, but most of the comments were more directed at one of the three than all
Yes.
three.
Okay.
Although there were comments about all three, I think.
Okay.
So don't really want to rehash that because that's not the purpose of the commission, but it does say something, it's communicating something to the commission about the general tolerance in a community about whether these kind of things should exist and how regulated should they be if they are permitted to exist. And it seems like if they are going to be permitted to exist, they need to be fairly regulated.
I agree.
To prevent abuse. And I think what's been crafted here is a decent first step, but I think the areas that we're going to want to see more development on and further discussion on is where, if anywhere, they're going to be permitted, and then tightening up this definition of unlawful conduct and making sure that really it's violating, a noise ordinance is enough to land you on that list. Because that would seem to me to be a very common nuisance issue that would be brought by
and-
this kind of use.
The noise issues typically do go to the police, so
Right.
they are documented.
Right.
And you don't have to go through the 911 system.
Right, you can just call
You can call their non-emergent number and they will still send somebody out. Same thing with the pool. In fact, if you do see that pool gate open and you're not gonna remedy it, just as a parent, grandparent, and homeowner, do something about it.
And then also adding a notice requirement, because that's fair to do. I think those are most of what we covered as major areas. Does anyone else have anything to add before we close just discussion on this subject?
No.
I don't, yeah.
But I'm grateful to staff and to council for putting this together. This is clearly an issue that needs to be addressed one way or the other. And I look forward to, further discussion on it, and if there's case on it, obviously we'll be here. So we're moving on to to another topic area of discussion, which is going to be a discussion about potentially modifying Article 5. This will be a new sections regarding managed natural landscaped areas or maintained natural lawns and/or pollinator gardens, etc. Mr. McCormick, you have a presentation on this.
Yeah, so on this one, we also have an appendix definition. This is for what we're calling maintain natural lawns. There are variations to how these things are termed or worded, but basically, what we're defining would allow the intentional planting and maintenance of perennial flora native to Ohio. This may involve a variety of horticultural practices, including but not limited to natural lawns, natural landscapes, native lawns, pollinator gardens, lawns, rain gardens, meadow vegetation, native prairie, prairie gardens, monarch way station, native plantings, native gardens, and butterfly habitat. Overgrown grass or vegetation should not be considered maintain natural lawn. One thing I want to talk to our council about is, because we threw so many things in here, is whether or not we should define some of these other terms like pollinator gardens, native, natural.
Yeah, I
and
think that would be helpful.
Yeah, if you, like natural lawn, if I read
That's-
that,
that's
it's like,
all
well,
lawns, right?
I'm just not gonna cut my grass and it becomes natural.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be a maintained natural lawn.
Right.
And not a nuisance, which is, I'm just not gonna cut my grass.
Right.
Anywhere,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because there is a difference.
Right.
And then one other question I had is about like whether we want to include something in there about bushes, shrubs, and trees as far as like the vegetation, again, because of it being potentially a nuisance, because they just don't want to do anything in that area. Now, in the new section 525 that's proposed here, really what this is born out of is we have some people that do have areas that they want to intentionally, carefully become natural for butterflies, for, maybe for bees,
Yeah. it's
things
fantastic.
like that. In some cases, these are pretty clearly well-managed areas. Maybe the edges aren't necessarily always
Right.
maintained. We've had to talk to some people about that. We had some complaints on some of these. Some of them are very clearly, like they're intentionally doing this and but they're not just leaving it alone. They are
Right,
trying to
right.
take care of it.
Right.
And then we have the other cases where literally they're just not doing anything, and that's the nuisance, right?
Right.
So what we're trying to do is delineate between the two and acknowledge that we will allow the one, but not necessarily let it come to the other, right? So that's the text that we've got drafted. Other than what I mentioned in the definitions, I didn't really have a lot of questions that we didn't address between staff and legal counsel in 525. You know, the natural lawns that are being maintained should not encroach on sight lines, rights of way, public easements, adjacent properties, access to structures and utilities in the property. So that's one major area. We wanted to make sure we were taking care of all the problematic areas. They will have a clear, well-maintained boundary edge. That's another thing, because sometimes you never know where it really stops. So is it then really maintained or not? And then you've got some percentages of the lot we've got that we allow in here in 3. Those numbers could probably be tweaked. I think those are based on some other codes that we thought were pretty good. And we were even referred to in one of the township trustee meetings to a couple codes.
Right.
I believe Anderson Township was one of them.
Yep.
And there were a couple others that we looked at. And then at the very bottom, we've got that section in there, generally overgrown grass or vegetation which is inconsistent with the definition of the maintained natural lawn is determined in the reasonable discretion of the zoning director, or you could say designee, shall not be considered maintained natural lawn if the zoning director determines the maintained natural lawn to be a nuisance and the owner or the occupant of the subject property disagrees with the determination, an appeal may be made to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So there is still recourse for people, right? We have had that situation happen. The intent is to try to get away from what happened here a few months ago, where we've had somebody a couple of times over the years, where the neighbors complain, that people come in and say, we're deliberately doing this for this purpose. And really what we were trying to get them to do is the stuff that we're showing in here.
Right.
So that what we don't have is a nuisance, right?
The Nature Center actually promotes this. And that's probably a good thing, because they probably have a very good definition of what this should be. But I know they do
Might
classes.
ask the contact I have for them to look at this. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, we're members and we get notices for things like that regularly.
Well, environmentally, it's very friendly, and if you've got some state residential.
Oh, yeah.
That it makes perfect sense to do that. It's a great thing if you're not actually farming a field, to let it,
Yeah.
to make it pollinate.
Like in my case, I've got property that's difficult to maintain, that nobody sees, even me, over the hill, that I could do this. I still maintain it, because I'm that anal. But-
You're that guy.
Yeah. But, yeah, so it's, I think the definition of what we're looking for should be fairly easy to define, and they should be able to help us do that.
Any questions or issues with what we've gone over with this particular item?
I only have a comment that, 20% to be in the front yard area where there's nothing in the side yard area. I mean, I'm just talking, we don't allow fences in the front yard. I just wonder, do we really want to allow this in the front yard? Maybe we do. I don't know. It's just,
So, I was looking at those numbers, and then I just doing the math, like, my front yard is 100 by 90, roughly. The backyard's a lot larger. If I just look at my wife's gardens, I'm at 20%. And they are pollinator gardens, they are, they're dedicated gardens, don't get me wrong, because she's got these cactus everywhere. They throw the needles at you, I'm pretty sure.
okay.
But no, that number, I think if you just took 20%, put it right in the middle of the yard,
Yeah.
it would look out of place. But I think if you're doing like the edging gardens and stuff, I think 20% then really isn't an
Okay.
unusual number. But again, I think there has to be, I don't know how you put it in here that it has to be somewhat tactful and not, basically middle finger to the neighbors.
Right.
Yeah, and I would like to see more fleshed out definitions, because there shouldn't be a conflation between this kind of activity and your normal landscaping kind of activities.
You
where
mean
your
in
flower
the
pl-
appendix definition, like,
Yeah, correct.
yeah, that's what I thought too.
To differentiate between those things, because it's like my flower bed isn't a naturally maintained lawn. It shouldn't go towards this total.
Right.
And I had the same concern that Doug had with front yards, but that's kind of how I reasoned it
Yeah,
out.
and I think it depends on the front yard.
Correct.
I mean, I've got a pretty big front yard,
Right.
so it's not a problem. I think if you were in a quarter acre lot,
Yeah.
that's, 20%'s not gonna give you much anyway.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, I'd like to know more who's using this and who's this is directed at, because my guess is they fall into two camps. One is estate residential, responsible homeowner, landowner, and the other one is just nuisance people who've come up with a
Yeah.
creative excuse for not maintaining their property.
If this comes to case, we have a specific address, and they invited us to their home.
Yeah, that was over by Brandon Moore.
Yeah, it's off
Oh,
Brandon.
okay.
Yeah.
And I had met these people years ago through a neighbor of theirs that is a friend of mine. And they're both, he's I believe a biologist, but they're both very much ecologically friendly. And even back then, neighbors didn't have a problem back then, but something changed.
Well, I think it's more particularly maybe one group of neighbors, but we even had a lot of other neighbors email or write us in support of what they were
Yeah.
doing, so it's not altogether the ER areas. I think it totally depends on the people.
Okay.
And having the well-defined
Yeah.
area helps, and, at the end of the day, we have the discretion to still
You still
say,
have the-
nope, that's
But, and I think.
Right.
a nuisance.
You
and
still
they
have the
can argue.
caveat to go out
Yeah.
and enforce
So-
it.
Something
Right.
that should be in there, I think, is an interval of maintenance. Because if you say it's maintained, but I'm doing a maintained black walnut forest, that's every 10 years I go in and trim. But in a natural lawn, it would be, there needs to be evidence of them being out there throughout the year, doing maintenance.
Doing what they're
Whether
supposed to be
it's-
doing.
Yeah, whether it's weeding or cutting things back or whatever. If they're just letting it go year after year after year, that doesn't fit.
So
Okay.
we'll open up, if that concludes our report, we'll open for public comment. We have one member of the public remaining with us. Would you like to speak, or are you good? Okay, come on up.
One is a compliment, and I don't know if it's you guys or if you guys even zone that, but totally unrelated. I am so offended at the cost of that gateway that Anderson did down on 32, I think
Oh.
$3.2 million.
Yep.
And I come up here and I see those dried weeds in the 32, I forget if they're the thistle or what they are. I hope you guys never do that. Like, they're covering everything, and you're talking about these maintained lawns. That's not a lawn, but it is so much better, and it's not a waste of my money, your money, or anyone's money to let things do what they're naturally meant to do. That is
A
just
lot of
so
that's the state.
compliments to you all for not jumping on that bandwagon of just putting fake plants that don't belong somewhere. They're not native, they're not natural. And so there's that. And I guess that was the only, the nuisance thing, I don't think this is you all, but I know this from experience because I don't want to give too much information, so I don't want anybody to know who they were. But that young man didn't know how to use a chainsaw, and he didn't own a chainsaw. And the place was just awful with down logs. I don't know if he did them or they fell. But my husband went and helped, and other people went and helped, and we didn't know he didn't know how to use a chainsaw, didn't know if he was just not wanting to maintain. That's not your alls, but if there's some way to, I don't know if maybe you ask people those things before they get in trouble with an unmaintained lawn. But people can't really afford lawnmowers, and finding old ones to work on, and these urban places aren't as easy as when it was more rural. You could find lawnmowers, somebody always had a lawnmower, they didn't want it. But anyway, I just wanted to compliment you all on not doing all that stuff like they did down in Anderson Township. That
They
makes
call
me
it
sick.
beautification.
I know they do, but it's not. Thank you.
Thank you.
To her point, when we do get from time to time complaints about people, and sometimes they turn out to be an elderly person who maybe can't get out and mow the lawn. And I know our zoning inspector tries to connect them with senior services and other people so that
There's places
they're
that can
getting help before we're getting a citation. You know, I mean, we do have to eventually sometimes cite people, but we're still trying to help them instead of just drop it on them and walk away.
If somebody's able-bodied and has a running lawnmower and chooses not to use it, that's a different story.
Yeah, exactly.
I cut
Now-
4 yards in my neighborhood.
There you go.
Yeah.
I got my neighbors.
There were a couple other things I was gonna talk to you about. I think what I'll do is maybe I'll just send you guys individually emails about a couple of topics to see if you have any interest instead of talk more tonight, because we've already kind of been here for 2 hours.
Right.
But I know we've talked about some other topics, and I'm just kind of curious if you have any interest in us spending time on them. And there's like 4 or 5 of them, and I'll just maybe do a small write-up and see if there's a thumbs up or not on some of these.
Well, I imagine we'll be meeting again sometime soon,
We have a
Yeah.
November meeting.
so.
I know we have one particular issue that we have had a resident / neighbor group talk to us about working on, but again, it's never risen to the top. And in that particular situation, they don't even necessarily need a new township rule because their own HOA, POA covenants and restrictions have
Yeah.
a provision to address it. The problem they have is that it's not being addressed by the HOA or POA. and so
Gotcha.
that they want the township to do it instead of having to pay to enforce it on their own. So, now, not all HOAs or POAs are set up to address the issue that they're concerned about, but I don't know that I mean, I'm the kind of person, I don't think we should create a body cast where a Band-Aid will work, you know?
Right.
So, I think it may be worth asking the question about whether we want to do something geared towards like what they're after, but I don't think that in their situation, it would necessarily make a huge difference, because the problem already exists and they're still already equipped to address it. So that's really the only one that's more pressing. Some of the other ones we've kind of mentioned, but we've not really gotten into deeply, so.
Okay.
And if you think it's something else, as I send that out to you or whatever, feel free to send me whatever you think is worth adding to the list, because even if we don't get to it in the next month or two, we could always put it on the list and revisit it.
Sounds good.
So we've completed our agenda for the evening. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Mr. McCormick, can you call roll?
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Toft,
Yes.
Mr. Wing.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, this commission is adjourned 8:56 PM.
Just under 9.